Then we asked about having children. And at that time, one of the reasons that Prabhupada married me because of my health, so it still wasn't very good. In fact, it got a little worse. So we asked about having children, and Prabhupada wrote to us that, first we asked if we could be like Bhaktivinoda Thakur and pray for a ray of Vishnu, like he did. You know, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur came as his son. So Prabhupada wrote back, we cannot imitate the acharyas, we can only follow in their footsteps, so you shouldn't pray for a ray of Vishnu. Then, finally, the conclusion of all these children letters was that because my health wasn't good, he said, better if you both become children of Krishna rather than try to have a child for Krishna. If the mother is ill when she's pregnant, then the baby will come out sick and will be a burden both on the child and on the parents. Then I had a lot of problems with submission, as a lot of Western-grown people did. And because Satsrup Maharaj was the editor of Prabhupada's Bhagavatams, we would get the manuscripts first. He would type and edit, so we got first before anybody on the planet. So one thing I read from the transcription was, it was the story of Devahuti and Kardama Muni. Finished? Devahuti and Kardama Muni. And she was a great princess, but she gave up her prestige and served her husband like a menial servant. And in that passage, Prabhupada wrote that the wife shares the pious activities, pious results of the husband, if she serves him. So I wasn't too much in favor of being the recipient of somebody else's pious activities. I wanted to be the benefactor of the pious activities and take that role, take the predominant role. So I thought, well, probably this is just, ancient Vedic culture, and it doesn't apply to me. I hoped it didn't. So I wrote to Prabhupada, and I quoted that verse in the Bhagavatam, and I said, I'm writing this to you for confirmation. So Prabhupada wrote back, he said, yes, it is confirmed by me that the wife is the shareholder of the husband's pious activities, so you should know that Srimad Satsarup, his life fully dedicated to Krishna, you should follow his instructions. Of course, he cannot stop or interfere with your service to me, but at least you should follow the general instructions. I realized I had to do better.
And then I started to tell him what actually happened. That I told him about Bhima's Mahaprasthan. Prabhupada heard about that, and right after that Prabhupada was planning to go for a parikrama of Govardhan, and I feel Prabhupada is actually planning to go on a Mahaprasthan himself, the final departure. And then Babaji Maharaj said, then we can't let him go. Then I said, Babaji Maharaj, the only person who can convince Prabhupada not to go is you. So Babaji Maharaj was so humble, he said, me? How can I tell him? So I said, you are the only person who can actually convince him. So then Babaji Maharaj, he just got up, washed his hands and mouth, and walked straight up to Srila Prabhupada and said, I heard everything, and I feel that you should not go to parikrama. Then Prabhupada said, Babaji Maharaj, if you say so, then I will not go. And at that time, we kind of took it for granted that Srila Prabhupada came to Vrindavan to leave his body, And so around that time, Tamal Krishna Maharaj one day, he told me that we don't really know what to do if Prabhupada leaves his body. If Prabhupada left his body, I didn't know. We didn't know what to do. So he asked me to find out from Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj. And so, I went one afternoon, late afternoon, I went to Madhav Maharaj's mutt, where Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj was staying. So I went, but Babaji Maharaj was not there. So waiting for him for a while, I just came back. So when I came back, Upendra Prabhu, who was Prabhupada's servant at that time, told me that Prabhupada was looking for me. So I ran into Prabhupada's room and asked him whether he wanted me to do anything. So Prabhupada asked, where did you go? Where were you? So I said, Prabhupada, I went to Madhav Maharaj's mutt. So Prabhupada asked, why did you go there? I mean, his voice was ringing with anger, he said, why did you go there? And I couldn't answer, why I went there, it was, how could I say why I went there? And I was just silent, and then Prabhupada's voice kept on, rising, and he was screaming, why did you go there? So finally I said, Prabhupada, I went to see Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj. And then Prabhupada's voice became even louder with anger. And he asked, why did you go there? So I finally said, Prabhupada, Tama Krishna Maharaj wanted me to go there. And then Prabhupada said, oh, I see. He became quiet. From that, I learned a lesson that Prabhupada didn't want us to go out to anybody. Although he had such a good relationship with Babaji Maharaj, still he didn't want us to go to him. And that actually, it makes it, later on I got to know, how Prabhupada said that if they say one thing different from me, then everything will be spoiled. And that's why Prabhupada didn't want us to go anywhere. He was like a caring father, who was just protecting us from any danger.
Then in Srila Prabhupada's last days, when he visited Bombay and he could just lie on the bed, nothing more, he was remembering his struggle in Juhu. And he kept trying to say something. He wanted to say something. That dog. And we couldn't understand what he meant, whether he meant Mr. N or that dog. And then finally it came out that at one stage he was staying at the house of Mr. Krishna Kapoor. And Mr. Krishna Kapoor had a big dog. And every morning he would drive Srila Prabhupada to Juhu Beach to walk, and the dog would sit next to Srila Prabhupada in the car. So Srila Prabhupada was just, when he was thinking over all that he had done to get the Juhu land, he thought of that dog, that he had to ride in a car next to a dog. So, Srila Prabhupada was not of this world. Just for him to be in the material world was such a sacrifice. But even within the material world, he made so much sacrifice just for the sake of us, the sake of the fallen souls, the sake of spreading Krishna consciousness. And I think that probably all of Srila Prabhupada's good qualities came together in the one effort to spread Krishna consciousness. And if we could just dedicate ourselves and surrender to Srila Prabhupada's mood and mission of spreading Krishna consciousness, we would also be forced to develop all good qualities and get the result or get the reward of Prabhupada's mercy. And there's nothing higher than that.